All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in again. I am happy to be with Christina Elliott. We are now moving on to the Commissioner District 2 for Island County. And this is the Democratic candidate for Commissioner. How are you doing today, Christina?
Good. Thanks for having me, Richard.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I have a list of questions that I'm asking all the candidates, so we'll jump right into it. The first one is, what made you decide to run for county commissioner?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a little secret story because I think there's a um there's a public facing story that is the tone of my campaign, and then there's kind of a secret story. So everybody has these things that they're passionate about. And for me, it's always been housing. It still is. I spend I mean, I'm writing postcards right now for the the general, and I'm just listening to housing podcasts, and really probably most people think they're boring finance podcasts about the housing market, but um, I've just always been really into real estate and watching trends and economics and things like that. And so when we finally were in a spot where we were kind of forced to buy a house here because there was nothing for rent, um, my husband's in the Navy, so we had the VA loan available. We went ahead and did it. It was a really big decision because we'd always been lifelong renters. And when we got the house, we felt really lucky. But also, the first time we saw it was about a week after closing. It was full of mold, like mushrooms growing out of the joists, mold. Um, and it was honestly the best that we could do. There were six other offers. Everyone was way over asking. I mean, it was just pandemonium. So I'm glad we got in, but the more that we've been here, the harder I've seen that it is for everybody that's trying to move to Island County. And a lot of people are moving here, specifically Oak Harbor, where I live and would represent, because they're being forced to by the Navy.
Right.
And there really isn't, and people do it, but there really isn't an option to commute from places like Everett and Burlington and Concrete. And these are just some of the places I know people are commuting from. They do it, but it doesn't go that well. And so what I would like to see more of is a focus here in Island County on the future of housing, especially workforce housing, so that we can invite people to live here, that they can serve as sailors, they can work on our police force, they can work in our hospital, because right now that's just not a reality that's accessible or affordable for a lot of people on Camino or would be.
Yeah. And even if they were commuting from as close as Anacortes, if you ask a military person and you said your husband's in the Navy, so how much they enjoy being late, it's really not a good thing. I was in the Navy for 11
Yeah,
years, and it's their biggest fear. And you are completely dependent on Deception Pass if you are coming
yeah,
from Anacortes.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, no, I mean it's really difficult to make that commute to Whidbey Island if everything's going well. If something doesn't go well, you're just not going to make it on time.
yeah,
Um,
for sure. And this matters when you're working at six. So my husband, he was just on a schedule where he was working for 2 years, 12 hours on, 12 hours off. So from 6 to 6, and sometimes it was at night, and sometimes it was during the day.
ugh, yeah,
Which meant he was getting up at 4:30, and we live 7 minutes away from base. So that meant if he lived where most of his coworkers live, he would have had to wake up around 3:30 in the morning. He'd get back around 8:30 at night.
yep,
And so
yep.
that's really difficult. So yeah, that's publicly why I got into the race, and the kind of overarching catalyst of what got me interested in county government, because every time I looked around, it seemed to come back to not at a state level, not at a city level necessarily. It was really that middle point in the county that they had the most powerful effect over influencing developers to come here and making it hospitable conditions for people to decide to build here, or to move permits along a little bit more quickly so that they can get rid of those holding costs of construction and move forward with their projects. So that's what got me interested in it. And then privately, there's everybody I think has this catalyst to get into a race. And so I think for a lot of people, they have a conversation with someone. And I actually had a really interesting conversation with my opponent. And that was actually what got me into the race because I walked away from that conversation and I respected what was said, but I just decided that we could do better as Island County in the way that we communicated with constituents.
Okay. All right. No, that's a very good answer. Thank you for telling me the secret story. Uh, so we're now getting at crunch time for campaigns
Yeah.
where now you just got to kind of spend everything you got. Because I think I could be wrong, but I think all the ballots are being mailed out today.
Today. Oh,
Yeah. So there's a
mm,
requirement on the 18th. It must be done by the 18th, but
okay. I
I
always heard
think
it was tomorrow, but I mean, 6 of
I could
1,
I
10
could
of
be wrong.
whatever it
I could
is.
be wrong, but it'll definitely be done within the next 3 days. But
Yes, yeah,
it,
for
it's
sure.
it's very possible. I heard from somebody who could be wrong that today they could go out. They must be sent out on the 18th by law.
Yeah, yeah.
So that means in the next 5 days to a week, people are going to start getting their ballots. So what's kind of this? How are you working to try and outreach to voters and communicate with them, knowing that we've got a week left before people make their decision. A lot of people will just fill it in the first day, drop it off, and then you've lost the opportunity. So what's the last week look like for you?
Well, the last week looks like sending out the mail that we've put together. So we did a really coordinated, very specific mail campaign. And so that will get launched by the 17th. We're planning to mail things out. We are setting up some other communication devices. We'll see how all of that goes. I'm a first-time candidate, and a lot of the all of well, I don't wanna say all of the work because 'cause I've had some great volunteers, but all of the back end work or the project management, that's all been me, and so it's been dependent on what I can accomplish and how quickly I can learn some of these tools or get approvals from third-party entities and things like that. So specifically, that's what I'm working on, but I feel like most of the campaigning that I've done has been knocking on doors since June. I've really had a lot of conversations with voters on both islands, and that was where I laid the groundwork for this so that I didn't have to have that crunch time this week. I think everybody feels the crunch, like, I'm not
It
immune
doesn't
to
matter.
it,
You could
but
be the best campaigner in history, and the last
yeah.
week is the worst.
Yeah, you always wanna do more, or at least I would hope. I always wanna do more personally, so, yeah, there's always more to do, but I feel really good about it, and I feel really good that I've been able to knock on so many doors and have those conversations and hear what's important to people.
Okay. All right. So if election day comes November 5th, and then we announce it, we're going to do a live Facebook here on election day, and I'm going to be going from 5 p.m. to midnight. And
Oh
so
my goodness,
I
really?
hope you'll join us and talk to us before the results. And we're
I
going to go ahead and announce results here.
Wow, I
Um,
was actually wondering if anyone was gonna do, like, a
Nobody does it.
debate or
I'm a
something.
pioneer. I'm going to do it. The people need me, so I have stepped up. So I'll be announcing Island County, some of Snohomish County, uh,
Wow,
and
okay.
and then of course Washington State, and
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for doing
so
that.
nope, and we're going to be going over the numbers live, and we're going to kind of discuss it. So if that comes out on November 5th, and there's going to be counting for a while, so it could we may not know the night of the election who won.
You're not gonna know in my race
Um,
who won. My
well, don't say
understanding
that.
is
We could. I've
you
seen
think
it
so? I
before.
don't know.
It's possible. I've seen races. So the way I see it,
Yeah.
if it's more than a 4 point spread in an Island County race, I've never seen it flip. Um,
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely gonna have a very good understanding of who's gonna take the seat,
yeah,
but I wouldn't say that I would feel confident in that result until probably at least the next day or even the day after.
yeah, you got to be. I mean, you got to do a little bit of a fun stuff with it. Like one, I could tell, like for example, if it was a Democrat versus a Republican, if the counting was pretty heavy and the if we had a lot of ballots in District 1 and not
Yeah.
very many in District 2, and it's close,
Right.
I'd be like, it's definitely looking like it's going to go for the Republican, and then it's going to go look for the Democrat if all of Camano was counted and Oak Harbor was counted, and the Democrat's still in it because South Woodby's going to come and carry the Democrat home. So don't worry, I won't call it unless I know. But yeah, we're going to kind of go over it. So let's say you're announced the winner, or we find out a week later that you're a winner. What are going to be the top 3 priorities when you take office?
Yeah, obviously housing is key. So I talked a little bit about what that would look like for me, speeding the process up, making it more developer friendly. But really, I would like to work with the city of Oak Harbor. My dream would be to work with the city of Oak Harbor to increase density there, where we have the resources for more housing. And it's already a designated urban growth area. We have all of the infrastructure. I'm saying we, but the infrastructure that the county has set up concentrated in Oak Harbor, namely transit, any kind of access to county resources. Like if someone is experiencing homelessness and they need to lean on the Spin Cafe, like all of those resources are concentrated here in Oak Harbor.
Mhm.
And it's also primarily where it isn't primary, it is where our largest employer is located with NAS Woodby. So that's why I think it's important to look at how we can develop housing, multifamily apartment type housing in Oak Harbor. And that's not something that the county can do by itself. It has to be done with the city of Oak Harbor. But at the same time, that's why I'm here, to be that driver for that change. And I think it would just I know a lot of people don't like that word. They don't like to hear the word change. They don't like to think about change. But there's a lot of good that could be done for people here where it could increase access to Windjammer Park and the businesses downtown. I'm really sensitive to what they're going through right now, just as a small business owner myself. And I would love to see more foot traffic down there, more support for our local businesses, and more of a community. And that's what you start to have when you have a society that isn't so reliant on car transportation, to get everywhere within their community, especially a community like Oak Harbor, where we're already transient due to the Navy. And it can, I mean, literally all of my best friends have already moved.
Oh,
So it made it
just before you're running for office. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, they all just PCS to Hawaii and Virginia and stuff, and so, it made it really easy to campaign because I had no more friends to hang out with, but, um, yeah, it's been hard, and I think that's part of what I desire to see is more of that community, but that starts with creating those spaces where people can gather and reliably, see people just in their normal daily life. It's like the I don't know, like, it's kind of like a Seinfeld effect, right? Like, if you go to the same coffee shop, you see the same people, you say hello, you start to get to know them, and that's just not the reality right here. I know I'm describing, like, a very Pollyanna existence. I'm not naive to that, but I really do think that's where it starts is with more stable housing, both in terms of availability at an economic like, a macroeconomic level, and then also, um, more housing security for the people that live here so that they aren't so underwater on their rent or their housing payments, or even having a place to rent. Because right now there's a lot of places that won't accept renters in any practical capacity. You know, you have a dog or you have a cat and you have 2 kids instead of 1 or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
so
No.
housing is the number 1 priority. Number 2 would be healthcare, improving access to healthcare. I'm the only candidate in the race who's endorsed by Planned Parenthood. I'm really proud of Planned Parenthood Alliance, they want me to say. I'm really proud of that just because it shows my commitment to women's healthcare, women's access to healthcare, and senior healthcare. VA healthcare is all really, really important because if those people in our community don't have the access to the healthcare that they need, it doesn't matter what benefits were afforded to them through their service. I'm talking about VA specifically now. Um, we need to make sure that they maintain that access, that they have good doctors on island if they don't want to travel to Seattle for, say, cancer treatment, um, or neurological treatment. My mom has MS and Parkinson's, so I'm She has ever since I was little. So I'm really sensitive to just the fact that there's a lot of families that are living kind of in sandwich generations where they are caring for an adult parent and kids. And so, oh, and the other thing about NAS Whidbey is it's one of the what are they called? The ENFP sites. Spacing on what it stands for now, but all the Navy's acronyms. Exceptional Family Member Program.
Right.
So we just by nature we have a higher not desire, we have a higher need here in this community for people to have access to healthcare resources that would benefit those families. um, and then finally, I see a lot of functions of the government that aren't quite met here in Island County. So one of them is trails, bike lanes, things like that. We've had an exceptional number of pedestrian deaths on our state roads, and I know those are state roads, but um, our county roads don't have bike lanes either. And so what I would like to see is more access to multimodality transportation methods. So if you are in a um, motorized wheelchair, or if you ride an e-bike to work to commute, if you don't want to have a second car because that is a strain on your family right now, and the only way you can afford a house is if you don't have a second car payment. These are ways for families to save money, but right now they have to commute via car. And I know that's these things that I'm talking about, it must be really difficult being on Camino, because it's like these are all would be centric things. um,
We're used to
so
it.
well,
So,
so but I know you're going to ask a question about Camino, so I'm waiting for that. But yeah, I mean, on Whidbey specifically, where we do have those higher speed limits and we have a lot more traffic that's just literally flowing through the island, from bridge to ferry type of thing. It's really important that we find a way to build the trails that we possibly can have next to those highways, and um, just create different ways for people to commute, get cars off the road because people are commuting by bike or using Island County Transit, making sure that's functional. So yeah, I would say housing, healthcare, and um, quality of life, but really specifically in the area of building multimodality transit, making sure transit's good.
okay. So just kind of a follow up on that.
Sure, yeah.
Because you said a lot. There's a lot of good information in there. So just for some clarification. So the third one is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, we need to increase our trails, try and make it easier for transportation. Now, some of that's going to be work with the state, but you could be an advocate for that. So now for the first one with the housing, and you had mentioned Oak Harbor. So there's issues with Oak Harbor itself too. And I'm sure anyone on the city council will tell you, or Mayor Ronnie Wright, they have an issue right now with their sewer system.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they've made any steps to fix it yet. I know they're in the process of doing it. We've got smart people working on the problem. But right now, they are dangerously close to not having one. If they are one disaster away from a lot of angry people. So if we start putting,
And the water
yeah,
that's coming in, not just the sewer. Yeah.
yeah. So that would probably need to be fixed first. As Island County Commissioner, do you think you could assist? I mean, because if we need to get housing in Oak Harbor, that problem needs to be solved. Because if it's not
Yeah.
solved, we
Well,
can't
and
put much rain.
that's why I haven't gone harder in other. I mean, it. There's not a good solution anywhere on the island. If you go south, you have issues with conservation land, EB's reserve. You have even further south than that, you're going to have problems with septic. And then water. Water is always going to be an issue no matter where you are, whether you're in Oak Harbor and that's coming from the Skagit River via whatever, the 2-foot tube underneath Deception Pass, or if you're trying to perk a well for a larger development on the south end. So yeah, there's not an easy solution. I am not an engineer, and that's what I would, that's why there's three of us on the board of county commissioners, and there's also a lot of people that are working within the county that are specialists in their area. But that would be my goal, to at least identify somewhere that we could build more housing, especially rental housing for people that could work here. My goal is to do it near Oak Harbor just because, again, that's where those resources are concentrated, but I'm not saying that that's where it has to happen or that it could happen if it's not feasible, right? Like
Right.
if it's an impossibility engineering-wise, there's not much that we can do until
Yeah.
either the infrastructure is fixed or we find a different way to build with a different means of infrastructure.
Okay. Um, and then with healthcare, um, the hospital is what the hospital is.
Yes,
It's that's a
but Island
tougher.
County Public
Yeah.
Health has they have a really great opportunity to expand. My understanding is that they actually have the funding to do more with their travel medicine clinic, and that hasn't been pursued. They've
Oh,
they've made attempts, and it's kind of either not been a priority or it's kind of fallen on deaf ears. And they would love to see the travel medicine clinic expand.
okay. Well, thank you, and thanks for allowing me to do the follow up because
Oh yeah, absolutely.
you
Please.
hit on one of the things that I'm not that well versed on, and so I just it's good to hear from you how it is that we can improve that. So we are on to you already did hit it. The biggest problems in Island County, in your opinion?
Well, one of them specifically with Camino is the lack of connection. It's been really disheartening campaigning and canvassing in Camino and talking to people and just hearing how, I've heard phrases like they feel out to sea, they feel on their own. Um, not for anything, but they're sharing the tax burden of the county.
Right.
And it sounds like they're not able to capitalize on all the resources that the county's providing, or they don't know about them, or it just is physically inaccessible. It's located in things are located in Camino or Langley or Oak Harbor, and that's a 2-hour drive. At best, it's an hour and 15 minutes to Oak Harbor from Camino, and that's just Terry's Corner. Like that's not even counting the people in the south end of Camino. So that's an issue. I looked at what would happen. So I have jury duty in November, and I looked at what it would be like if I were to commute from Terry's Corner to the Island County Courthouse. And I'm going off of Google Maps. So, I hope the Island Transit is updated within that. But it would take 4 hours. I'd have to go all the way down to either Everett or wait for a while at the Skagit Transportation Center. Um, Either way, there's no way using Island County Transit. So if I don't have a car, there's no way for me to be a juror in Island County at the district courthouse in Oak Harbor, which is where I got called to jury. Some people get called at the Superior Court, whatever. But
Mhm.
there's no way for me to get back to Camino um, and serve on a jury. So I'm going to have a car in order to do that.
Yep,
That is a
100% of the
failure
time.
of the transit system. And it's just, I don't think anyone did it on purpose or maliciously, but that is the kind of thing that if you don't have people that are modeling that, they're not going to find that that's an issue. I had to buy a car when I moved to Island County. I never had a car for the last few years before I lived here. And I lived in rural areas. I lived in cities. My husband was stationed at Buckley Air Force Base right before this. And before that, I lived in the mountains of Colorado, like very, very rural. Never needed a car. And when I moved here, I had to get one. And so I'm really, really sensitive to the fact that not everyone is going to have a car. Not everybody wants to have a car. Um, and so we need to have alternative means for people to connect to the resources that they're paying essentially to use.
Yeah. Okay. Um,
I forget the
and
rest of your question though.
no, you answered it. Biggest problems that are facing Island County right now.
Yeah, I think it's the lack of connection, it's housing, and it's I mean, there's a lot, but there's also a lot of really boring kind of systems and operations.
Well, we are all about boring on this show. So, what do you got?
I don't know exactly because I haven't gotten in there and had the job. So I'm sure once I got in there, I would see more of the efficiencies that we could use. But my background is in, um, for lack of a better word, tech, because that's such a broad umbrella that means nothing really, but it means that you just worked in that area. But I worked with a lot of client management systems, sometimes called CRMs. I've worked with a lot of AI and GPTs writing, LLMs and things like that. And so even though I'm a lawyer, that's where I've spent a lot of my career, because those are the types of things that help create more efficiency for your clients. Is, if you can bill a lower hourly rate and get the same amount of work done or even a better work product done, why wouldn't you do that for your client? Why wouldn't you give them a better work product at the end of the day, um, in a budget that they can still afford? So those are the types of efficiencies that I've worked on personally, and I would like to see more of at the county level. What they have in effect right now, I really can't say. So I'm not qualified to comment on that just because I don't work in the county yet.
Mhm.
But I know there's efficiencies. Like this sounds, this is hard, but I just know that there's things I'm going to get in there and see that we could improve and make more efficient. And probably, there will be limitations due to whatever SaaS they're using, right? They have a contract with someone that we're going to have to stick to, whatever. But there will be different ways to improve and make things more efficient within the county itself, especially with personnel, and just making it a more um, just a more hospitable place to work, more
Yeah.
respectful.
No, and there's one thing that you can always count on with government. If you go in there and look, you can always find either something that's inefficient or you can find waste. I don't
Yes.
think there is a government organization out there where you won't find those things. And if there is, I want to know who it is and implement that everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, okay, thank you. That's a good one. Here's the fun one. What separates you from your opponent?
Where to start? I mean, there's a lot. I'm a Democrat. She's a Republican, and we are very much people that will vote our party line. She's shown that time and time again, and um, I'm very clear about what I stand for and why I'm running as a Democrat, what I represent. So I feel like I'm really transparent in that way. Um, we have a different way that we approach the way that we would lead staff. When I was running my company, I never had someone quit on me, which is actually really impressive. One person left, but she didn't quit per se. She left the industry. Um, Out of 23 people that I'd hired over the course of 7 years. And so I had to fire people, of course. Sometimes it didn't work out, but the leadership style that we each embody is very different from the other. And I would say that's our biggest differentiator, is the way that we will lead a team and lead the departments within the county, the way that we'll treat those people. And then I think another big differentiator is just the fact that I have a legal background. I've been practicing law. I've been practicing trademark prosecution for 10 years now, almost 11. Next month will be 11. And so I just approach everything in a very factual, researched way. I don't like to make decisions quickly. Um, I like to look at what we have available in front of us and make the best decision that we can with all the information that we can collect. I'm a data person. And so I'm really not someone who will sit there and make a gut decision based off of feeling. I'm going to just look 10 layers deep, and I'm going to look at the people on the project, and I'm going to research, who they're connected to and what self-interest they might have. And just, that's just who I am. I'm just a researcher, and I have to look at all of the angles that are going into something to make sure that we're making the best decision, really from like a more macroeconomic level than just a gut feeling or because I know someone. So I think those are some big differentiators, and that's honestly, I think that's helpful in this situation, because I'll just approach things without the bias that someone who's been here for a long time would have. I don't know the handshake deals. I don't know the implicit understandings that exist. I just know what code and law says, and that's what I'm going to apply.
Okay. All right. So here's my question, my favorite. So as you know, Camino Island, as we've kind of discussed, they're kind of out to lunch here, their own island, and so either you have to go through one county through the ferry system to get to from Whidbey to Camino, or you have to drive through two counties, which would be Skagit and Snohomish, just to get to Camino Island.
Yeah.
We have no local government, none, no city council, no mayor. Our entire government is based off the three commissioners. So, that being said, if you were elected and you take office, what will you do to ensure that the Camano Island voters will have reasonable access to you?
I asked a group last week when I was there what they wanted, and it was pretty clear. People said a town hall. They want a commissioner to be there and to hold a town hall for them to explain what's going on. I know that and believe me, I'm one of these people, but I know in 2025, there's going to be other ways to communicate than in person, face to face, probably more efficiently, definitely more efficiently. But that's what they want. If you look at the demographics on Camino, it's overwhelmingly older, one of the largest Vietnam vet populations per capita in the state. And so those are the types of people that really just again, they want to have that community. They want to have that face-to-face interaction. They want to just be able to ask questions in a candid environment. And so that's what I have to offer them, is listening to them and being there in person and holding those town halls probably once a month, if not more frequently.
Okay, yeah, that's really good. That's what I want to hear. Is like, yeah, I will at least be there once a month. Is something that we would like to hear in Camano. So, now Janet St. Clair, she is our commissioner, right?
Yeah.
She's the one that
Yeah.
comes from here, and then she covers part of North Whidbey. She has done a pretty good job of being accessible, but the only issue, that I hear from some people, they say, well, we want to be respectful of Janet St. Clair's spot. And that's great, but she's only 1/3 of the vote. So Whidbey Island, every time, can outvote Camano, and that is our only government source. So
Yeah.
that's why I think it's important that all three commissioners spend some time in Camano, because
your district puts you up, so they kind of choose, like we say, these are the two best candidates from our district. But if you're an Island County commissioner, you're an Island County commissioner. You're
right.
you're for all three districts. You have to listen to all three.
Yeah, and so yeah, no, perfect. Yeah, just that's always been an issue for Camano voters.
Yeah.
We only have two people
Rightfully
that I know
so.
of. Yeah,
You guys had to build your own library, and there was a lot that you had to do on your own.
mm-hmm.
Even the admin building, that wasn't something that was approved from my district. It was the other two commissioners that approved it. So yeah, you guys need a better ally, and that's what I'm there to do. Janet's a great friend, and she's been a great mentor through my campaign. So, she's one point of contact though. There's
Right.
thousands of people on Camino, and that's the point of the town hall, is to get to know those people, because one
Yep.
person who's been a representative from that area is not anything but one person.
Right, and the only other person from Camano that's in Island County government in an elected position is Kelly Mauk, the assessor, which is good, but it'd be nice if we could have reasonable access to all of them.
Yeah. What would that look like for you?
Well, we have an annex building. So one thing that I would recommend.
That's what I'm saying. Janet and no, sorry. That was Rick and excuse me, that was Rick and Helen that approved that.
Right. So yeah, we have an admin building. So I think we should have the elected officials at least use it occasionally.
Yeah.
At least maybe
it's
once
beautiful.
a month. So now Janet St. Clair, she has an office in there.
Yeah.
I'd like to see the other commissioners have an office in there that sometimes gets used, for them to post when they're going to be there, so that people who want to talk to the commissioners can do it. And then I would also like for the other elected officials. Now, obviously, all you can do is control you. You can't control the other two commissioners, and you can't control the other elected officials. But what I would like to see is all the elected officials to try and set up a time where they can come in, and the people of Camano can speak to their elected official.
Yeah.
Now, the two who are doing well at that is Kelly Mauk and Janet St. Clair. Now, that's partially because they live here, so it's a little easier.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see at least a little bit more of our elected officials.
Yeah.
And I think most Camano voters, regardless of party, agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, all right. We've got one of the big issues that always comes up anywhere right now is public safety. And that can come in the form of firefighters. That comes in the form of police. So what solutions would you want to bring to our current public safety problems? For example, we've got fentanyl like everywhere else, and we're losing people. We're losing people, and drugs seems to have no borders. It does not matter if you're rich or poor.
No.
It
No,
doesn't
my
matter
best
if
friend
you're
from law school died at 27 from a fentanyl overdose.
people that you
Up
would
and
never
coming
expect.
lawyer, went to a great law school, dead. Yeah.
People, devout Christians that consistently go to church, people you would never see it coming, get just killed by the stuff. And
Yeah.
fentanyl is deadlier than anything we've seen before. So,
Even people that were addicted to opioids previously, this is like nothing they've ever tried.
yeah, no, I mean,
I
I
mean,
actually,
this is really devastating.
yeah, I mean, basically, from what I heard from, and I spoke to Dr. Raul Garcia, who's running for Senate,
Right.
um, and he said that's my number one issue, because he sees it. And I said, okay, so what is it that you're seeing when these people are doing fentanyl? He's like, they're just dead. It just kills you. It's poison.
And
It's
well, and
straight
our
poison.
paramedics, our police are overdosing too, because if you touch someone that has any extra residue on them and you don't have extra Narcan, you're at risk. I mean,
Yep.
this is a very serious problem, and I don't think people understand. It's like you're saying, everyone thinks it's not going to happen in their community, or even if it does, that happens to them over there. It's like this othering. But I can promise anybody that's watching this that they know someone who has substance abuse issues. And if they don't
Mhm.
know that person, they do, but that person isn't feeling like they can
Confide in you. Yeah.
yeah, that they can share that they're struggling right now. And so that's where it starts, is the education. Um, we I'm actually really impressed with Island County has a lot of education programs, especially through Snow Isle libraries. They do the shore friendly, that's a public health initiative. They do the shore friendly workshops, and they do other public health workshops through the Snow Isle library system. And so that's not what I was going to talk about, but that could be one avenue that we use just to start to train people to look for the signs of substance abuse. Because I can tell you what I saw in hindsight, but it doesn't matter because my best friend is still dead. So that's the kind of thing that if people could see those little tiny symptoms, they might be clued in to have the ability to get that person help, or even to support them to find, to show them that there is help. But as part of a bigger public safety conversation, it starts with, I know we need more people in the sheriff's department. We need to hire people, but they don't have a place to live right now. So it kind of goes back to housing in that regard. The other problem, though, is that, or excuse me, not problem, but the other opportunity, I should say, that we really have as a county is to have more specialized support within the law enforcement community. So, for example, we don't have any SANE certified nurses, sexual assault nurses in the county. If someone is sexually assaulted, man or woman, they have to go to Everett, or they have to go onto the mainland for the nearest sexual assault kit. And so that's an issue because, I don't want to. Maybe I should have given like a warning or something to parents that are listening in the car. But if you are dealing with SA, the last thing you want to do is be separated from everyone and everything and especially if you don't have a means back, because a sheriff's deputy will take you to go get these SA kits, but they're not going to bring you back. They're not going to be your personal chauffeur Uber back to the island. And so we have an issue where people aren't getting the support that they need. Again, this is men and women. This isn't just women. So if we could have more specialized support on Whidbey and on Camino, there's actually a really significant development that could go into Camino to support people, survivors of SA. So that's on the table. I don't know how much I can go into that, but that could be something that would be really beneficial for the whole community and really put Camino on the map within Washington. And so that would be really important. That could be a great benefit to the whole community. And then also just having more specialized support like co-responders. So Oak Harbor they had 2 co-responders. I know they were down to 1. And then the other issue with the co-responders was that they had to go with a police officer. They didn't have their own vehicle. And so basically it would pull police officers away from other calls that they should have been responding to, or that um, it would actually pull them off the co-responder call, is my understanding, to go to the higher level response call that they're getting pulled away for. So if the co-responders in Oak Harbor, that's obviously an Oak Harbor City issue, but like if we could have co-responders at a county level, these are social workers typically that are trained to respond to mental health crises, which anyone that knows what happened in uh, Green Bank last month knows that, this is like something that actually happens here. Um, we could have co-responders that take those types of calls that don't pull our PD off of the important work that they're doing. And we could also probably use at least one more animal control person. I won't go into all of the correlations between animal control and domestic abuse. We just had 2 murders in the last week here that were both related or directly caused by intimate partner violence. So if we could have more specialized support in these areas at the county level, it would benefit everyone, because it could allow the police officers, to do what they're trained to do best and not pull them away to other areas where they don't feel as prepared. Our EMT, especially on Camino, they're responding to these drug overdoses. They're the ones that have or excuse me, it's not even your EMT, it's your fire department that
Right.
has the Narcan. And so if they're responding to calls, they're not necessarily available for other things, but there's going to be other calls that are coming in. And so again, just having this more specialized support, it's not necessarily going to add to the budget that we would need, because these could just be reallocated from different departments. And then the other idea that I have for the county that I have not seen the county pursue is more grants. And right now we have the executive directors and the assistant directors of each of of each of the county branches that are tasked with pursuing their own grant funding. The problem with that, though, is that they already have a full plate. And so I think we're leaving a lot of money at the state and federal level on the table, because we're not applying for the grants that we could be using in this county. And so
Now,
what I
let
would
me
like
ask
to
you a
see the
question
county.
very specifically about that, because this is
Yeah.
something that I get confused on. So with those grants,
Yeah.
and they sound great, right? That's where the state or the federal government comes in, spends money on something that we can do here.
And nonprofits, but yeah.
Right. So what that does often is it creates a new program that we have here in Island County that's covered by the state and federal government, but it has a timetable, which means eventually Island County has to take the bill. So that's, I think, one thing that scares people is they don't want to take a grant that they're not going to be able to afford 5 years down the road.
Yeah.
So what you'll be cognizant of that, right? You don't. Every grant is not a good idea.
No, it's not unlimited funding forever. Right.
Yeah.
No, that's not the point of a grant. But a grant could pay for the most expensive part of hiring people, which is training and onboarding. And so that's what I would like to see the county lean on, instead of taxpayer money, is to lean on more grant funding. But in order to do that, we're probably going to have a central, like right now we have the grants functioning as spokes off of a wheel, but there's not a central hub. And that's what we would need at a county level, is someone that's more or less a project manager that's managing these executive and assistant directors that are asking for grant money. And then they could also be writing. I mean, grant writing is a pretty specialized skill. They could also be writing the grants, and then the executive and assistant directors could also be adding the nuance there in their respective areas of interest and expertise.
Okay. All right. And we are.
Again, this is something that I'm not, Queen Christina, if I get elected. This is something that's going to have to
Right,
go
of
through
course.
the other commissioners first.
Exactly.
But
So
this
one
is my
question that
idea.
I haven't asked yet,
Yeah, go for it.
and I wish I had asked Marie Shimada, but I should have. But I didn't. But so now I'll ask you. We are in a situation. There are some people who are looking that for the first time, we intentionally have 2 commissioners run for office and then another one 2 years later. The reason for that is so that we never replace all 3 commissioners the same year. So that way somebody who knows what's going on stays in. We are now in a position where we could potentially lose all 3. So if you and Marie Shimada win your respective elections, that's 2 of the incumbents gone. And Janet St. Clair, she wins her senatorial race. She's going to the Senate. and the Democrat Party is going to have to pick 3 people to send to you and Marie in that case to decide who the third person is. And do you foresee any problems if that happens, where you've got 3 brand new people? We've got huge plans coming in. We've got a jail that needs to be built. Do you foresee anything that might slow you guys down, or some problems if you don't have one of the veterans there?
I don't know what I don't know. So I don't know how the county is functioning right now. I'm assuming, based on your question, I mean, you might know more from the other candidates you've talked to that are working there. It doesn't sound like there's any kind of SOP or like handoff procedure. So when I left, I sold a company in 2022, and most of the work in selling that company was creating SOPs so that it could literally be handed off to the next team. Um, I don't know if that exists. It doesn't sound like you're confident that that exists.
Well, we're talking
Um,
about government. Okay. So
yeah,
businesses
no,
have to
fair, but
function to survive. Government survives no matter what they do.
yeah. So I mean, I can promise that if I were elected to that position, that's something that I would have to hand off to the next person coming in, because that's just how I operate. Um, to answer your question though, because I understand I'm kind of skirting around it and it's not purposeful. I do think that it would be a slower uptake, just to be honest, because none of us would have the experience, right? We'd have to learn kind of the flow of everything, but that's not an insurmountable hurdle. Like, that isn't something that I would be really concerned with. The other thing just to keep in mind is that Janet can also stay on as a commissioner. She is allowed to work that position and her Senate seat if she gets
Mhm.
elected. So I'm going to guess that it wouldn't just be, everybody's gone at once. It would probably at least be her handing over the reins and showing us the ropes. Um, and I would hope that the other 2 commissioners, even if I know it's kind of weird because you run against someone for your job, but if you think about it, any job that you take over for someone else, they have to train their replacement. And so I don't think it's that different from any other position in the workforce where you're getting replaced, you train your replacement. I just would hope that it would be a handoff for the better of Island County and not just a political kind of posturing or, snub or something like that. I don't think either of the people that are in there that, Marie and I are running against would do that to us.
Okay. Um, Thank you. That was a very good answer. You did not skirt around it at all. That was a very good answer. So thank you. And this one's all about you. What is the greatest strength that you're going to bring to Island County government?
It's a mix up between my background in tech and my legal background. So it's no secret that the county has to rely on its prosecuting attorney quite a bit. So he acts as their general counsel. They also have to legislate and create policy. And so in order to do that effectively, you have to do that based on precedent and the RCW. So you can't just make up rules that are outside of those domains. That is what it's going to help me be faster at making the policy and the changes that we need to see implemented. Is I'll be working within those constructs, just because that's how I've trained. That's what I've always done in my career, rather than trying to, how should I say this? Rather than just trying to, I don't know how I want to say that, but all I can say is that I'm very proactive. I'm very motivated to find the solutions. And there's a lot of things that early on in my campaign, I approached from a more general perspective. And I think part of that was because I didn't understand how, like, I didn't see the transparency that I wanted to see in terms of looking at what the county government does and how it makes decisions. And to some extent, as the public, we can still see how they make decisions by watching the sessions. But even those are really difficult to follow sometimes. And there's just, I don't know, I keep going back to this efficiency, but there's so many little nuanced things that I see that could be so much better just right off the top of my head. And this is again going back to your question, like what I would change, what I would bring. This is just how my brain works. So, for example, I got my jury duty notice, and it didn't have anything about like a QR code or anything to Island Transit. Take transit, there's these lines, go find your route to the courthouse. Um, in fact, it barely even reminds you which court you're going to, which is pretty important because one's in Coopville and one's in Oak Harbor.
Right. Yeah.
We also have recorded sessions, which is amazing, but a lot of them are hours and hours and hours of content, which a normal constituent is just not going to sit through, nor do they want to, or nor should they, especially in the age of AI. So these are the types of things that we could index, that we could have as searchable databases, and not just a Zoom link that someone has to download and manually scroll through to find the information that they're looking for. And so that's what I bring, is not just saying, oh, transparency or whatever, but creating that kind of access to the government and the meetings that are held, so that people really can have a transparent experience with the government in a way that makes sense for them, not just checking a box at the county level to put it online so that they can say it went up, but actually making those meetings and access to the county resources a lot more accessible.
Yeah, no, I actually love that idea. So like the hours long videos, if there was a way we could index them. So if
it would be so easy to do with AI, like literally so easy, and it would be searchable. And if you were ever looking to cite past decisions, you'd be able to find it like that, versus right now, I have to know that Helen Price Johnson was probably the commissioner that decided on this. And it was if she was the commissioner, it was probably around this date. So I should go listen to the meetings around that date. Or hopefully there's a Would-Be News Times article about. Right now, it is so tedious and not very accurate to find the decisions that the commissioners have made. So this is also going to help hold the commissioners accountable. If we can if you can see that they voted for something or against something. So those are the types of things that it's hard to quantify, but that's what I want to bring to the county and make more efficient.
Yeah, no, and it'd be really helpful, especially if you had a problem with something that happened. And instead of having to look through hours of tape, you could be like, oh, gosh darn it. And then you look at the index. Oh, this is when they voted on this. And then you watch 5 minutes. Then you know who to yell out and what about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, that's a good idea. I like it. You should definitely open up more about that idea. So,
well, I'll take your advice because you are a political consultant.
Well, you guys are doing pretty well here. So, but yeah, no, that is a really good idea. And transparency is something that's always important in government. So it's something I didn't even think of. So I really like it. And I'm kind of jealous that I didn't think of it. So,
well, maybe you can help me implement it, because you can help me advocate, because a lot of people hear AI and they just lose interest, get scared. It's
I mean, and there's still a learning curve. Like I'm not up to date on AI right now. It just keeps changing so much. Like I know how to ask it questions and how to use it to basically make sure I didn't write anything that makes no sense. That's about it. That's where I'm at. But there's so much more you can do with it. So yeah, we're gonna have to get. Much as I hate it, we're gonna have to get.
If you ever want to nerd out about it, let me know, because
I probably will. Like that's something that we're gonna have to figure out.
Yeah, I write I write like GPTs for fun, just to make my life better.
Oh, all right. Yeah, no, we will talk then.
Let's do
it. So thank you so much for coming on. I know it's always, you never know what to expect when you jump onto an interview, and I appreciate you giving us the chance to ask you questions here. And I think this explained a lot about where your campaign's at, what you're thinking, some of the changes you're going to want to implement. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thanks for a great interview. I really appreciate it.
All righty. Well, I will chat. Oh, one last question.
Sure.
On Election Day, I'm doing a podcast live on Facebook and Twitter. Can we get you on for a few minutes, somewhere between 5 and midnight?
Sure. Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And with that, we'll end it. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Yeah.